Welcome. This is So Creative. I'm Karen, and I have lots of things to share with you today, so hopefully Facebook will find us. Anyway, number one, if you see something you like, just comment sold and the name that I give you, and then you'll be able to buy it. I'm going to do a demo today, and while I do the demo, I am not going to be selling, but right after the demo, I will be selling all the products that I demo. So I want to save the demo so you can always watch it later without me interrupting. Anyway, if you saw our email today, then you know that we got new fabric in and we did fat quarter packs, so I wanted to show you those first. This is the light fat quarter pack of Wander. Look at those cute owls. There's beautiful fabrics to go with it. We put 6 fat quarters into a pack, and look at those mushrooms too. So this one is light Wander. And then we did a dark version. So here are the same owls on black. And then we have the beautiful leaves. We have birch bark. I love this one. I think this is so pretty, this mottled moss. And then we have this beautiful one. And again, the mushrooms. So,
I cannot go to the next product.
oh my goodness, we're really having trouble with Shopify today. I'm going to keep talking, and we'll just not change what it's saying in the top. So when I tell you what to type in, it's really important because seemingly our computer system is not letting the next thing come up. So the first one I showed you, you would type in sold light for the fat quarters, and the second one you would type in sold dark. Okay. Then I wanted to remind you that we are really into these stitching bags right now. I've done videos on them in earlier Facebook Lives, and I did a specific long video which will be in our future email and on YouTube so that you can watch how I do it step by step. But if you want to make one of these great rice bags, you're going to type in bag to get this wonderful pattern. It is extremely well done. I highly recommend it. So sold bag if you want the bag pattern. And I wanted to show you we made a new linen cotton blend pack. Hopefully you can see it without the glare. We have this great polka dot one, and then 4 other tone on tones and 2 yards of the twill tape. So that's enough for at least 3 or 4 bags. The twill tape is enough for 1 bag. You're going to type in dots, sold dots, if you want that one. Okay. All right. So now I want to give you a demo of how I do wool applique, because as you guys know, most of our block of the months are using wool applique. They're done by hand. I love hand stitching, so here is how I do it. First of all, I put Form Flex on the back. So this is one of my future panels. This will be a future part of a block of the month, and we'll talk about it even further in a little bit. But here's Form Flex. I put this thin layer of fabric. It's fusible. I iron it to the back of every single thing that I am going to hand stitch, whether I'm doing embroidery or wool applique, doesn't matter. I always use Form Flex. So if you would like a yard of Form Flex, just type in Form Flex. If you want 3 yards, type sold Form Flex 3 times, and we'll give you a straight cut. So I said I wasn't going to do that. Anyway, you want to put Form Flex on the back of everything that you embroider. Once I have decided on the pattern that I'm going to use, and in this case, I am using somebody else's patterns. So she did a great job breaking down the designs, and I could take freezer paper and trace around every single thing onto the matte side of freezer paper, and then iron the shiny side to my wool. Or I can use pre-cut freezer paper that goes straight through your printer, and that's what I did this time because there were so many pieces. I just didn't want to spend my time tracing. So this is pre-cut paper. You put it into a printer, like a copy machine, put your pattern on top, it prints right onto the paper, and then you're going to use paper scissors to cut out all of the pieces, and then you're going to iron them onto your wool. Now, wool is kind of spendy, so I really try hard to get my pieces as close to each other as I can and still be able to use my scissors to cut those pieces out. Okay, so let's talk about scissors. When I cut out my wool applique, I love these curved pink scissors because with the curve, it's really easy for me to cut right around the pieces. The curve does a lot of the work for me, and it makes the job a whole lot faster. They are very sharp all the way to the point, so I love these curved scissors. All right, once I have all of those pieces cut out, then I'm going to pin them to my background. And don't forget, I put the Formflex on the background already, and now I'm going to use tiny little applique pins to pin everything in place. And the reason I use the tiny little applique pins is because when I'm stitching, my stitches don't get hooked on those pins. So I highly recommend tiny little applique pins. And let's talk about the stitching. So I like to use tulip needles. They're really beautiful needles from Japan. It's very easy to thread them. I use 2 strands of embroidery floss when I sew down my wool. So every single piece of wool that I want tacked down, I use 2 strands of embroidery floss and an embroidery needle. So let's show you how I'm doing this. I use a whip stitch. So I am just coming up about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of my wool. You can see where I came up. And I'm going down right on the outside edge. And then I take the next stitch about 1/4 of an inch beyond, and then 1/4 of an inch in. And I really like to use a whip stitch because I am going to come back in with pearl cotton, or sometimes I use yarn that I couch down to outline my pieces. And so I just want something to hold all of my pieces in place while I'm doing the fancier stitching. If I don't have them held down, I'm going to have a real problem later. Some people use a blanket stitch, but I find it's much easier and faster for me to use a whip stitch. So that's how I sew down all of my wool before I start embellishing. All right, so then let's talk about embellishing. Here's another block from this quilt. I love using pearl cotton when I embellish. So just to give you an idea, these are some of the wonderful pearl cottons that we have in the store. When you do a block of the month with us, you don't have to worry because you are going to receive all of your thread, all of your floss to whip stitch everything down, all of the pearl cotton to go around and do fancier stitches, and all of the hand-dyed wool that you see that we used. So I wanted to show you one other stitch. As you can see, these really cute little French knots add so much to the scene. If you look over here, you can see how boring it would be if I hadn't put the French knots on. When I do a wrapped stitch like a French knot, it's really important to have a Milner's size 1 needle. And the reason for that is that you can see the eye of the needle is about the same width as the shank of the needle. Whereas a regular embroidery needle, well, that one's not a good example, but most of the time a regular embroidery needle, the eye would bow out and it would make it harder when you're doing your wrap stitches. So I'm going to show you really quickly. I'm going to wrap 3 times around my needle and I'm going to put it down into my fabric, and I'm going to keep the thread taut when I pull through. And it's very easy for me to pull the needle through because that eye is so much the same size as the shank. So we'll do one more for you. I really like doing French knots, and I love using variegated thread because you get such a nice look. So I wrap it 3 times and go down. If I wanted a thicker French knot, I would have to go to a thicker thread rather than wrapping more times. So that's how you do French knots. All right. I think that I have covered everything. That's how I do my wool applique. If I'm couching yarns, I make sure that I have a really nice big eye needle and I thread the yarn through the needle and bring it up from the back. And then I go over it with my pearl cotton or my embroidery floss to hold it in place. There are lots of embroidery stitches that I've done as a free tutorial for you. If you just go to classes on our website, there's a drop-down menu and it says tutorial for hand stitches and other tutorials.